preserved and safe. And like I said on Saturday, looking forward to a good discussion. Chief Ford, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, council members, Budget Chair Morgan, and other members of the committee as a whole. Most of you have seen all of this already, so I'm not going to read every page for you. But first of all, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this afternoon. I do an overview of the proposed capital improvement program for the City of Memphis for the fiscal year 2022. As the mayor shared with you during his budget presentation at the last council meeting, for the last couple of years, we've been on this growth trajectory, and this year he has proposed to you a CIP spending budget that aligned with and supported our city's capital needs for successful continued operations and continued promotion of economic and community development. We will continue to maintain our mission-critical projects, maintenance, major modification cover lines, necessary capital acquisitions for vehicles, and those projects that are mandated by law. The mayor has proposed the continuation of those pivotal projects, which the city has previously committed to funding, those that are essential to the health and welfare of our communities, such as the Fraser Library, the Ed Rice Community Center, and City Fire Station. This year's proposed budget also contains a few new projects that complement the reoccurring projects and the new accelerated Memphis project plans. The mayor has recommended a capital improvement program budget for the general obligation bond support of $88.8 million. Next slide, please. This is just an overview. We'll provide information related to the overall program. Each division presentation will provide specifics related to their operations for the FY22 proposed CIP budget. Next slide, please.
They're a little behind.
What?
They're a little behind. Yeah. Get to tell them what slide you're on.
Oh, page 3. This is it. This is it. While the deliberation of the recommended spending encompasses the participation of division managers, I would like to thank Director Manny Boleen and Director Antonio Adams for their invaluable service and their commitment to the development of the CIP proposed budget, as well as the CIP budget teams, Demetrius Wyatt and Carrie Watkins. Next slide, please. This slide provides a brief overview of the parameters of the CIP budget, and while the overall strategic plan for capital improvement is on a 5-year basis, the fiscal year 2022 CIP budget is a 1-year allocation. Principal general obligation bond retirement for FY21 is approximately $91 million. The proposed GEO bond funding for FY22 is proposed at $89 million. Next slide. This is the information was provided at the presentation of the proposed budget and is just aimed, are we on the same page, at sharing the parameters and guidelines for the GEO bond eligibility. Slide 6, please. This is my favorite slide of all time, and it's going to continue to be that way for the next couple of years. But this slide provides the current scheduling of principal and interest debt retirement through 2048. As we have discussed on several occasions, of special note is the significant decline in GEO bond debt service in 2027. As a result of the debt restructure that was proposed and approved in 2015, the city implemented a 10-year strategic plan to position itself for significant and material flexibility to fund through capital pay-go instead of general obligation debt. Also, the STROP is what, of course, was the catalyst for Accelerate Memphis. Next slide, please, 7. Here we go, thank you. While the city did experience some slowdown on project completions as a result of the impact of the pandemic, we are anticipating that FY22 will be busy and back on track. There were several projects that were delayed or pushed in FY21, including the police radio system upgrades and the new Fraser Library, which we are very excited to come back. And then, as always, with our GEO bond spending, we plan to take advantage of the maximum project funding from other sources, federal, state, local, other CIP. Next slide, please, 8. So the proposed spending of limited resources is presented to you after serious deliberations, financial analysis, and comprehensive strategic planning and alignment to ensure the maximum use of funds for the maximum benefit to the city, our citizens, and our communities. One of the new projects, with the new project lines, is the establishment of a cover line for the maintenance and upkeep of the Renaissance Convention Center. And this cover line is intended to complement the renovation and support maintenance in areas not included in the renovation. I would like to take this time, this is not on your slides, but I would like to bring to your attention that the administration will be proposing an amendment to the CIP budget that was distributed to you after the mayor's presentation. I neglected to include the MATA continued CIP for the BRT project in that initial proposal that we sent you. That amount was approved by council back in August of 2020 for committed funding for out years, and I'm sorry, I just neglected to pull it into FY22. So in order to accommodate what we already had as a fully allocated GEO bond funding, the Public Works cover line for asphalt and paving was augmented from other local CIP in order to maintain the total project funding of $19.5 million as it has been for several years. This proposed amendment will be noted again during the presentations of both Public Works and MATA. Next slide, please. This slide provides the current rating status of the city's general obligation bonds. This review was conducted in November of 2020. We are currently in the process of reviewing and meeting with both agencies for the bond ratings for the Accelerate Memphis bonds. We continue to maintain our great rating. In spite of the pandemic and other areas, we were able to maintain. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a summary of the CIP budget for all the funding sources, not just the GEO bonds. The total funding for FY22 that is proposed is $230.2 million. This includes GEO bonds, capital pay-go for both the stormwater and the sewer funds, as well as sewer revenue bonds and stormwater revenues and the other local CIP. This slide also pulls out for you and provides the carry forward amount for $401.6 million, of which $20.6 is funded by GEO bonds. The division presentations will provide the carry forward relevant to each division, and I would like to note as we have moved through our years, our carry forward is continuing to decrease as we tighten the execution on our CIP projects. Next slide. So this is just a visual depiction of the source of funds. As you can see, the GEO bonds provide approximately 38.57%, followed by the capital pay-go of 31.2%. The revenue bonds for both the sewer and stormwater are at 29.28%, and our local other CIP is 1.13%. Next slide. This slide is just a visual depiction of the divisions and or funds that are using the proposed CIP budget this year. Next slide, please. And then as we go into our appendix, you've seen all of this information before it's been presented, but just this is just to kind of summarize where we are. Next slide. The next couple of pages will give you the general improvement bond proposal for each one of these divisions. And again, those will be followed by the presentations. Next slide. This is General Services, HCD, Information Technology. Next slide. Library, MATA, Memphis River Parks, and Parks. And next slide concludes with Police, Public Works, and then our requested cover line for the Renaissance Convention Center. Slides 18 and 19 give the detail of the capital acquisition request for FY22 by division. Today, you will hear from Director Adams, who will also be giving detailed information on each one of these divisional projects for capital acquisition. And then slide 20 Thank you. Provides the summary of the enterprise funds, which includes our sewer fund and our stormwater fund. This will also be presented in detail, funding from Public Works Division when they make their presentation to you on Thursday. Next slide. And that is just a brief summary of where we are. I would like to thank Mayor Strickland and this administration for the leadership and guidance that provided a proposed budget that makes strategic, targeted investments in our infrastructure and that continues to address the important initiatives that provide vital services to our community. I would also like to thank you for your partnership and collaboration. It's wonderful to actually see your faces again and to reaffirm with you our commitment to continuing to work together for the benefit and the betterment of our city, our communities, and our citizens. As the division leaders bring their proposed FY22 CIP budgets to you for review, consideration, and approval, we thank you for your time, your resources, and your commitment to the continued success of our city. And with permission, I would like to yield the floor to Chief McGowan for any additional comments and or discussion.
Thank you. Let's get to work.
All right, thank you all very much. Please show council members Colvette and Ford present for the record. And we're back to our old school system of getting in the queue. So yeah, just try to get my attention. I'll look back and forth down the dais. Councilman Easter Thomas, did I see you? Oh, you're just waving. Okay. So Councilman Carlisle, followed by Councilman Johnson. Councilman Carlisle.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello. So a couple high-level questions, just running over some of the top-level bullet points. 88.8 million this year. Last year, I think we started at 77. We amended the CIP budget for IT and then utilized those funds to offset the CARES Act, 5 million. So where are we booking Accelerate Memphis' $20 million GEO bond as a part of this? So we just booked that separately, or it's not a part of official budget season, I guess is the way to say it, but where are we booking that 20 million?
Thank you. The Accelerate Memphis will be contained in a separate capital fund so that we can track those projects and all the proceeds that come in for those projects separately. They do augment, but they will be accounted for separately.
Sure, yeah. I just, really for FY21, it's 108 million, but we knew that when we talked about it, Accelerate. When we talked about it at the time, I just didn't see it in here, and that answers that question. For the Renaissance Convention Center, for that cover line, why out of the GEO bonds instead of TVZ funds or some sort of account, hotel motel allocation?
I'll take that. We typically have a request every year from the Renaissance Convention Center for capital items that exceed their operating expenses. As you know, they took quite a hit. So they had a list and a request this year for several items that were repairs that were beyond the scope of the renovation. And quite frankly, we just wanted to shift to a regular and recurring request that they could count on in the out years as they could program in some repairs and give some predictability. I realize that their revenues are generated by basically just what their allocation request is from us in the general fund for operating, and there is no really provision set out in the TVZ for allocation of capital improvements. It's only for the debt service that is covered on that particular project. So we thought this was more predictable for us to be able to manage, for them to be able to manage the facility going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that we're being forward thinking and creating kind of that reserve cover line so we don't end up where we are today. I should say prior to the renovation. It seemingly has been a problem all over the city from years past. I had one more higher level question. We can talk about it offline because it's something that I just want to understand a little bit better. One is how we determine utilizing our commercial paper for shorter term assets, and then our conversion rate, like how we look at converting and what to convert. For me, I look at it as like using a revolving loan until the life of the asset's placed into service and then deciding, okay, now we'll amortize it, right? So I'd love to talk to you more about that because I just don't fully understand how those determinations are made other than knowing that we have like a 3-year asset or 5-year asset, like a vehicle. And then Shirley, would you explain to me how, and again, we can do it more offline, but how we determine or how the public accounting practices allow for the treatment of capital leases or on capital assets and more towards how we look at things like vehicle purchases and where we can book them. I don't want to get in a situation where we obligate ourselves to operating leases on assets because I think that money is very precious, and I know you guys do too, and our weighted average cost of capital in our debt structure. So purchasing a vehicle may make more sense that way, but I don't understand how, what is and isn't allowable from an accounting standpoint on a short-term asset like that.
And I'll be glad to cover that with you. There is actually a new GASB pronouncement that is in the works and was put on hold because of the pandemic, specifically related to the municipal treatments of leases of that nature. So I'll be glad to discuss that with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Chair, and thank you for all the hard work. I look forward to a couple weeks of good times. So thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman Johnson? And please speak into the mics if we can.
Thank you. My question was similar to Councilman Chase. Is it $20 million on that amount, though? Was that what the accelerated amount was? I thought he said 20 million. That's what I was trying to.
For accelerated
How amount? What was the amount on that?
For accelerated methods, it's 200.
Okay, that was that was the same question I had in regards. How are you going to keep these funds separate, and were they included in this particular budget? Okay. The other question I had is in regards to the funds you did not spend in capital improvements this year. How are you picking them up next year? I mean, is that where we're getting the additional $3 million? Where is that money that we did not use?
So each year, we do have some capital money that was appropriated, whether it was allocated and appropriated in the prior year, that may not have gotten executed on in this particular year, especially this year with some of the slowdowns from the pandemic. So typically what we will do, if they are reoccurring projects, we reduce the current year ask to reflect the fact that we still had spending available.
So you're able to carry it over to a certain
That is
extent, even
correct.
though it's not, okay.
Yes, ma'am, that's part of the carry forward.
So how much were we able to carry over this year? Plus, we still have an increase.
Let's see, let me go back to my page. Hold on. Thank you, on page 10. The amount carried forward in GEO bond projects, not necessarily just for FY21, but any project that is still ongoing that has been completed or has been delayed, is $20 million.
Okay, so we don't have it just for 1 year.
Correct.
Okay.
It could be, like in the case where we have a 5-year
So
project,
it's just
a big
constantly.
building, yes ma'am, it could carry forward, yes ma'am, until the completion of the project.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you. Thank you for the time, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. Please show Councilman Smiley as being present as well. Chief Ford, does page 6, your favorite page, does that reflect Accelerate Memphis yet?
Actually, it does not.
It does not. Okay.
You will see, so as we talked about, our principal this year is 91, our interest is 55 million, total debt service 146. Accelerate. And the Accelerate Memphis slides that we've presented, you can see that it's laid on top of the other debt, and we can provide that again if that is beneficial to this discussion.
Okay, it looked like page 6 was an overall debt look, but it didn't cover everything.
We have not actually issued those bonds yet, so they are not actually on the schedule.
All right. Any other, Councilman Carlisle, make it quick. We're already over budget on the first one.
Really quickly, to that point, when do you guys expect to issue those bonds?
Actually, you have
on our docket
on
tomorrow?
tomorrow's
That's what I
agenda
thought. Okay.
for approval, yes.
And to clarify, I just want to say one other thing about the $200 million. So the reason I asked is it was $180 million in capital appreciation bonds and then $20 million in general obligation bonds, which is why I was asking if it had to be in here, but it's fine. All right. Thank you. I yield back.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other council members on the overview? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the engineering CIP presentation. Will somebody let Director Belen into the chambers?
Not enough.
And before they begin, can I go ahead and get a motion and a second on this item to hear it?
Move it.
All right, I heard a motion by Councilman Carlisle, a second by Councilman Colvett. Director Belen, the floor is yours for the engineering presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon.
Andy Belen with the Division of Engineering, here to present our FY22 CIP request. Next page, please. The first project that we have presenting to you is our SHIP project. This is a highway safety improvement program. Often the state will evaluate projects within the city limits, and some of the scope associated with some of the projects that they would do require some local match. So this cover line of the ask of 150,000 GEO bond will help offset some of that cost. So some of the scope of the work that would pay for that includes some curb and gutter that may not typically be part of their project. So again, this project is asking for 150,000. The next project is our LED traffic signal replacement project. We have historically been upgrading a lot of our traffic signals to LED lighting for energy efficiency. Some of those LED lighting has come to their life cycle, and so this funds the replacement of those LED lighting. And the ask for this is $1 million in GEO bond.
Let's wait to the end. Do you want me to put you in the queue? All right.
The next project is our traffic calming device project. The ask for this is $1.7 million. This project is where our speed hump program is funded through. So this is one of those very popular programs that the engineering division has. And so the ask for that is $1.7 million. The next project is our FY22 urban art cover line. Based on the past ordinances that have been passed, we allocate roughly about 1% of construction funding for urban art programs. Historically, we have not fully fulfilled that 1% of construction funds, but we are asking for $350,000 for FY22 to support that program. The next project is our STP pedestrian route. This is, often we'll get some funding through the state and federal. This particular project is looking and studying sidewalk improvements along Mimosa Avenue at Carpenter, Range Line Road at Ormond, and mid-block crossing at Kimball Avenue in front of Cherokee. The ask for that is $80,000 in GEO bond with the acceptance of federal grants in $127,344. So that GEO bond will leverage grant funds. The next several projects are also grant-funded projects. So the first one is the Ball Road sidewalk. This project includes repair, replacement, and construction of sidewalks, ADA curb ramps along Ball Road and Ketchum Road, and Perry Road and Airways. Again, the GEO bond ask for this is $168,000, leveraging a $331,000 grant. The next project is Dunbar Elementary School. Again, similar to the other project, is to improve condition pedestrian travel in the vicinity. The project cost in GEO bond is $168,000. That's the ask for that. And again, that is leveraging grant funds. The next project is a Mississippi Boulevard pedestrian improvements. This is intended to reconstruct the intersection of Mississippi Boulevard at Walker and South Parkway. That includes modernizing the traffic signals and enhancing pedestrian infrastructure in that area. The ask for this is a GEO bond of $264,000. again, leveraging grant funds. The next project is Range Line Road Sidewalk. This project will construct new sidewalk along the west side of Range Line Hills, or Range Line Road, apologize, between Wellings and St. Elmo. GeoBond ask is $78,000 with leveraging against a $292,000 federal grant funds. The next project is the Handley Elementary School Safety Improvement Project that will improve the pedestrian infrastructure around the elementary school. The GeoBond ask is $168,000, leveraging roughly $480,000 in grant funds. The next project is the Shelby Farms Midtown Green Line Connector. This is a plan and design project to construct pedestrian and cyclist path that connects the Shelby Farms Green Line to where it's currently terminated to Flicker at Cooper. So this is a GeoBond ask of $40,000, leveraging a $200,000 grant. The last page is a carry forward. This is the SHIP cover line that we had in previous years. And we're asking the entire $238,000 to be carried forward. I believe I did miss one of the project, which is traffic signal, slide number 4. If I can have somebody put that back on slide number 4, please. Thank you. So this is our traffic signal. This project helps us with updating and modernizing traffic signal at various intersections within the city. We're asking for a funding of GeoBond of $1 million. With that, that concludes engineering's presentation. Take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Councilman Johnson?
Yes, thank you. I'm just anxious to talk to you.
And again, please use the microphone for everybody listening.
I'm sorry.
Online.
I guess my question is, you're asking for $1 million on page 4 for your traffic signals. Last time you were in here, I think you told me one traffic signal was going up to like $340,000 by itself. So this is just for about 3 traffic signals to be placed there?
Yes, ma'am. So we aim at improving, modernizing intersections with the funding that's been allocated in previous years on an annual basis of $1 million. We anticipate 2, perhaps 3 intersections that we could potentially modernize, both from a contractual perspective as well as in-house operations. So we do anticipate, and we have heard from various vendors that cost increases of materials, we expect to have that happening right now. And so we're projecting what that additional cost would be. We may be reduced to 2 with the additional funding that we could.
Where did you use the money this past year? What projects?
Do you have those 2 locations?
Yes. So this past year, we completed projects at the intersection of Danny Thomas in Mississippi, and also Danny Thomas in Beale. And then we also completed a contractor constructed project at the intersection of Barron and Prescott.
Okay, and I had one other question. Looked like the allocation was small. It was 206. Okay, I guess it's on page 10. The cost of the total project is 264. You're going to modernize your traffic signals. I don't know how you're going to make to afford that.
So the 264 is the ask of GeoBond. It's actually more. We leverage grant-funded projects. What you don't see on this slide is the amount of funds that have already been appropriated through grant funds. So this ask of 264 leverages that 80%.
But you got the total cost here for 264.
That's for the new ask. But from a project perspective, the grant funds have already been appropriated previously. So we're not asking for any additional appropriation of grant funding.
So when did you get those funds?
The original grant was a SUBD grant, a Surface Transportation Block Grant from CDOT. That paid for the environmental design and right-of-way for that project to progress. Right now, we have the funding in place, for the local match for another grant that we're waiting on the award letter. Once that award letter comes in, we'll come through council asking to accept that award, which would be about $1.4 million.
Okay, so the total project is 1.4 plus the first grant you talked about, plus the 264.
Yes, and I think the overall project will end up being about $1.8 million once it's all spent. Right now, we just don't have that money in hand for us to say that we have that expended this year.
So if you don't receive any additional funds, what will happen to this money?
I would say that you would want us to spend it somewhere else at some
Okay.
point in time. I don't think we have a plan for that at this time. We're pretty, sure that we'll receive it. I don't want to put it down on an official document that's coming in until we know it's.
Okay. So that, I guess that would be true of a lot of these other total project costs. We don't have the complete project cost. We may have a portion of it at this time.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So where would I be able to get the total cost for these projects?
We can get you that information. Again, they're projected estimates of the construction, not anticipating any additional material costs that we may anticipate. But when we do submit for these, we project what those estimates are.
You know, when you're talking about different neighborhoods, people like to know how much money the city actually was working with in that neighborhood. Looking at this information, I would have told somebody $264,000, and that's not actually true. I need to say work and collaboration got us up to 1.8 million. So I think it would be good to have the complete project cost versus just what we're asking for at this particular time. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the time, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lynn, I'm looking at page 7, but there are multiple ones that have this funding amount plus federal grants. My question is, how many more federal grants are available, and are we leveraging all that we can? If we can say that, and I total just, may not have all the pages here, but I think it may have started at page 7. Our allocation is $534 million versus a total of 1.4. Are there additional grants that if we provided more of a local contribution, we can have additional funds beyond this? Particularly, these are things that, as I've opined about before, these are things where people see the results. They see their tax dollars being spent. Are we maximizing, or you know, where are we? Is this just small ask, we mid-range, or is this the most that are available that we can do these types of things?
So a lot of our grant funds come through the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Organization, Planning Organization. Various cities and municipalities are part of that group. And so when funds are available through that mechanism, we apply and submit for projects and for the use of those grant funds. It's a competitive opportunity, and it's rated based on the guidelines that are issued by the federal and the state. So whenever that cycle happens, it usually happens every 3 years.
Yeah, so the next cycle will be to have applications come out this coming December.
December.
Due in January.
Okay. So we will apply for those opportunities, submit projects that we may decide to go with, and then it gets ranked from there, and then that's how we pursue those.
Okay. So theoretically, and to follow that commentary, these theoretically can be plans that were submitted 3 years ago. We're just getting to the phase now.
Yes.
Where we have the funds available to do so.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We typically, as a city, we usually get over 70% of all the federal funding that comes in the grants, so usually a little bit more than that. Everything in Shelby County and Fayette County. We usually put in somewhere around 350 to 300. These things all go through the federal grant process, which means that delay in getting the contracts in place, to even start using the funding, so they have to go through environmental design right away. It doesn't matter if it's a servicing project or a signal project, it all goes through the same process. So that creates a longer timeline to actually do the construction and following all those checks and balances. All these projects are things that we apply.
So we'll have a new lunch, and let's come in December, this process will be completed.
Somebody suggest. After this budget season, we give you all a briefing on the TIP process, the transportation improvement. Anything that Manny and his team do relative to this is a very formal, long-term project. So I think it's worth us having an overview of that process so y'all can see it. May not be germane to this, but to your point, how do we get those federal funding for transportation? So maybe, Manny, can you take an action? Let's get the MPO after budget to come in and give us a good overview of that so we can make good inputs into that.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, because before this, I was just under there, making the impression of us, where y'all are just picking and choosing something that you wrote by the other day, because this is part of a greater scheme of things.
Yes, sir.
Yep, that'd be a great committee presentation. Thank you, Councilman Jones. You all set?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right, Councilman Smiley, then Councilman Carlisle.
I was about to withdraw, but a real quick question. What was the amount allocated for the urban art cover line in the previous year?
350 as well.
Okay, is there any particular projects going forward this year?
They typically, Director Kennedy with the Urban Art, she typically has a presentation. I'm not sure if she distributed those presentations to the committee, but we'll certainly provide that information. She typically includes what the funding is going to be used for, and I'll advise her to go ahead and distribute that.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. We'll get those presentations to everybody. Councilman Carlisle?
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank Councilwoman Johnson for a really nice series of questions, because I had similar questions on, in that regard. And it's nice, we've got these detailed descriptions that aren't extremely detailed. And so, it'd be nice to know that full, like, what's actually happening. Because in your detailed description of slide number 4, traffic signal FY22, it's $1 million, and it says on average 12 intersections are improved each year. And it's like, okay, but this is only buying me 2 light poles. So when we say intersection, what are we really saying? It would lead one to believe that you're doing 12 traffic signals, right? And that's not really the case. To that point, when we're talking about traffic signals in general, these new arms are coming out. So can you walk me through, exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about the intersections and the $1 million, and why we're talking about 12 versus 2, and what's happening? Is it all matched? What is?
So I guess I'll take the first lead on that, and I'll let my administrator, Randall Tatum, to kind of dive into the details. But this project handles 2 modernization of traffic intersection. What does that mean exactly? That means converting what the current wire signals are into map arms.
Right.
Okay. So that's the idea: updating our cabinets, updating wiring, updating loop systems that detect vehicles or what have you. In addition to that, we also use part of that fund for our internal. So we do have internal in-house teams that can do similar work. So that fund could also be used to fund other intersections, hence the potentially 12 intersections. It may not be the full map arm, underground cabling, or what have you, but it is potentially upgrading cables as well. So modernizing that, not necessarily the full scope, but at least part of it. I'll have Andy Randall add some additional.
Yes, sir, I think you spoke to it very well. I think an example of that would be like at an intersection where we're adding left turn phasing. So that would be considered a modification. And as a part of this CIP request, we get the equipment through the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And so on average, we're improving 12 intersections per year, even though only 2 of those may be a full rebuild, a full modernization project.
So I can appreciate that. This is what I would like to see next year. I'll let you go this year. This is general services. I can see rooftop units, boilers, et cetera. So I know exactly what my money is getting me. I would like to see that next year, if you have those projects identified.
Councilman, if I could just, I appreciate you saying that, and Councilwoman as well. I realize we should put more description in here of those projects, especially those ones even as Steven said, if it's a forecast revenue, this $264,000 is expected to match the forecast grant of X, Y, Z, and the other amounts that we have from before, totaling whatever the total project is. And we can certainly do this kind of detail for the intersections. And I think it's also important to note, as we talk about this, that these may be complements to other, as you know, the CRA is doing some signalization all along Jackson. You know, there's some other federally grant-funded programs that are improving some intersections. And Accelerate Memphis has anchors that will also improve intersections this coming year that will complement the work that we're doing here as those small area plans are completed. So giving the bigger context, I think, is helpful. We'd love to be able to do that for you. Sorry we didn't get that done this year for you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think I also recognize, too, that a significant amount of work goes in, day out, over the years to identify these things. And you guys have significant amounts of conversation, probably some healthy debate about priorities. And then we receive this budget. But for us, we're basically stepping in mid-thought, trying to play catch up. And the easiest, best way for us to do that and not to waste time in this room is to have it on the front end so that we're as caught up, like I can pick this document up and be as close to as knowledgeable about what you're asking for as anybody else. So I appreciate that. And the same thing on the LED lights. I'd be curious to know how that's going. So anyway, with that, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. On the $1.7 million for traffic calming devices, how many projects would that likely fund, and what is our current backlog of projects?
I'll let Mr. Randall talk about on that.
Yes, sir. So currently we have a list of 67 locations that have been approved for construction. So that's primarily what this new funding request is right now.
Okay, and will the 1.7 million get all 67 done, or?
This 1.7, I believe, includes a portion of construction and A&E. So I believe the construction portion of that is around 1.3 million. So with that, we should be able to install around 60 locations. So there may be approximately 7 or so that wouldn't be included in construction for FY22.
Okay, and the three of us have had some discussions this year via email about unsignalized intersections in the city of Memphis. And y'all shared with me this great list of kind of priority of intersections in the city that don't have signals. And here we have a request for updating already signalized intersections. What's the plan, or is there to begin putting signals in place where we don't have them? Where does that funding originate from?
Yeah, so typically that funding can come from various sources. One source is the CIP cover line, which we talked about before, where the state will come in and do a safety audit with the city and determine that, hey, we need a traffic signal at this location, and then we'll be able to leverage those federal funds against that. We also work through the MPO process to get funding for traffic signal work as well. One thing to mention about that with new signals, with those locations, there has to be a study conducted to determine if a new signal is actually warranted at that location. So any new location where we would be installing a traffic signal would, of course, have to meet that criteria. But yes, sir, all the various sources that we talked about can be utilized for that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think we'll probably have some more discussion in the operating budget about signals and replacements of signals too. Please show Councilman Robinson as present. Any other council members? Back to Councilman Johnson. Well, let's go to Councilman Logan first, then back to Councilman Johnson.
And I just wanted to ask for whenever we do the presentation, if we could have somewhat of a comprehensive look at the priorities list of those intersections that we know need updating based on safety or some type of safety, report or study or survey. And so that we can determine, or we'll also know if we're using that list to gauge where federal funds go. Like I heard Chief McGowan say that there's different sources that fund these types of upgrades. Well, are we using those sources based on a priorities list, or do they just select where they want to do the changes, or do we request them to support the priorities list? Which does it happen that way?
Yeah.
Or?
So when we submit for projects, it basically submits a project in the application, and then each of those projects get ranked based on the criteria that's been established. So the higher the ranking is, the more likely it's gonna get funded. So, and we don't have any control in terms of how that ranking is established.
Is it based on safety?
There's several criteria that's associated with that. Safety is one. And just data from the ground is what they look at as well.
Okay, so I think I heard you all say that you were gonna do a presentation later, so that can be included in that.
We can help facilitate that conversation with MPO and do a presentation through that whole cycle.
Thank you. You betcha.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes. Appears that you're asking for almost $5 million this year for your projects. When will we know projects are completed? Did I miss something, or have I been missing it? Do y'all ever come back and toot your horn and say, we completed this, and this? We spent X number of dollars this year, be happy, all these projects are behind us? That would be pretty neat. Suppose we could, sometime I see them being in the street, so I guess we did it. But do you ever come back?
So, yes, Councilwoman, I do present quarterly to you the spend. What we have talked about since that meeting is adding a little more meat to that, other than just spend, but what projects, not just what percentage completion the projects are, but what was the components of those projects that have been completed. And so we'll start adding that to the quarterly CIP report.
I think that would be good.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Toot your horn when you can,
I'd like to add, since we're talking about that, so Elvis Presley Boulevard Phase 1 was a project that we started 5 years ago, and it's finally coming to a fruition of completion. So you're right, we don't toot our horn in terms of completion of project, and we'll certainly do that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Ford. And Councilman Ford, can you use the mic, if you...
Since we want to bring up Elvis Presley Boulevard, they finished. They put shrubbery. Person that did it came from Mississippi, and it looks terrible. Look like weeds. Okay, I can cut my lawn where the funeral home is, but you can't see my lawn when I cut it for the weeds that they put down there. We questioned them while they were putting it. Who's going to do this? Who's going to do this? So we just put it down. It's left up to whatever y'all want to do. But it looks horrible. So I want y'all to look into that. But it looks like weeds.
Yes, sir. Thank you for sharing that, and we'll definitely get with our...
And I got a problem with them coming from Mississippi. We should have gotten somebody from here. But drive through that. It looks terrible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all that beauty of streets, everything that they did, but hey, when you look at it looks terrible. Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ford. Any other council members, comments, or questions?
I'll make a quick comment. I agree with Councilman Johnson. It's always nice to reconcile these projects. Manny, you get a light up at Scott Street. They may even have a ribbon cutting. I'll yield back.
Also, please show Councilman Canale as present. And we're going to move to a voice vote rather than a roll call vote. So it has been properly moved and seconded. The engineering CIP budget, 12 projects, $5.166 million. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Next up is the fire CIP. Will somebody get Director Sweat?
Mr. Chair, can we make sure that everyone who speaks introduces themselves? Because this gentleman here, I still don't know what his title was.
Yeah, I'm going to have the directors introduce their team. We should do that at the top. Thank you. I agree.
I still don't know who he is.
That's Mr. Euler. I'm sure you got some.
He was very knowledgeable. I was like, who are you?
Everybody loves the guy in the corner.
We're back in person.
Council members, I do want to recognize my team that
Yay.
Thank you.
came in here with me.
I was just asking questions about that.
So Randall Tatum is my administrator for traffic engineering, and then Stephen Edwards is transportation planning manager.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Director.
Okay, to begin, can I get a motion and a second on the fire CIP budget?
So move.
Second.
All right, moved by Councilman Smiley, seconded by Councilman Carlisle. Director Sweat, when you're ready, will you please introduce yourself and your team, and then the floor is yours.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everybody in person for a change. I think it's the first time in a year. This is Vicki Johnson. She is my finance administrator, and she's the one that keeps me in line on budget. So getting started, you ready for me to go ahead and get started on the presentation?
Please.
Okay. All right, looking at page 2, the next slide, please. The first project is personal protective equipment. This is a project that we fund yearly. This is to purchase the turnout ensembles that the firefighters wear, and also to replace any of the self-contained breathing apparatus or any of their components that have to be replaced throughout the year. The $600,000, that's to purchase new ensembles for our new recruits, and then any that become unusable throughout the year. If you'll notice, going out in the out years, those turnouts have a 10-year life expectancy if all goes well, and then we have to start, that'll be when we start phasing in, having to replace some that will be more than 10 years old in 2025. The next slide, page 3, is the EMA sirens. As you're aware, the Office of Emergency Management falls under the Memphis Fire Department, and we are responsible for the 107 sirens now. 107 sirens. Some of these are antiquated, and so we anticipate that they have to be replaced throughout the year, depending on what kind it is. Sometimes the prices vary on that. Some of them are on wooden poles, and then sometimes they have to be upgraded to a steel pole when we replace them. So this 127,200, that should replace from 2 to 3 sirens next year. This is the construction for Fire Station 1. So some of you were at the grand opening of Fire Station 43. Fire Station 1 is basically a very, designed by the same architect. It's very similar in construction. It's just a tad larger than Fire Station 43 because it will house both an engine and an aerial apparatus. This is moving the station on Jackson Avenue as well as the station on Chelsea Avenue, combining them into the one station. This has been a planned project. With the current Fire Station 1 was sold to St. Jude, and we're now leasing it back now. So this $6 million is construction that we anticipate finishing anywhere between 12 and 18 months is what our construction cycle is working on the project so far, depending, hopefully we don't have another pandemic that slows us down like it did with 43s. And then the out years will be the and IT once we finish construction. Fire station, page 5 is our fire station repair cover line. I'm asking for $1.5 million for that this year. This line funds livability items. As you know, the firefighters live in the fire station. And so we go in, we have 56 different fire stations that we upkeep. And we also have 10 other facilities that we also provide that upkeep on. And this will be able to go in and make livability improvements like floor replacement, HVAC improvements, kitchens, bathrooms, some of the same things that you would renovate in your home if you wanted to improve the living conditions in your home. So that 1.5, we will do a little bit to a number of stations next year to try to improve the living conditions for the firefighters. Page 6. This is a new project. The fire administration building construction is well underway. We anticipate being in that building late September, early October. But that whole site, what we are now calling, will be the fire campus. those of you that are familiar with the overpass, I know you're familiar with the Scott Street overpass. So if you're going over that overpass, you can see the old training tower. So it's in bad shape now, but we want to conserve that building, and the vision is to eventually turn that into a wellness center for the firefighters. We have several different physical fitness and mental wellness initiatives going, but they're not in a convenient location right now. We're doing those at our training campus, all the way out almost to Millington. So this will be a more centralized location where firefighters could come and participate in those wellness activities. This $300,000 next year will basically to fix the roof on it, so we won't get any more damage, repair the windows, get it locked, closed up where there's no more damage, and to do some cleaning of the facility where pigeons and stuff have got into it and made it basically uninhabitable right now. So this is basically just to clean it up and get it boarded up until we get funds to pursue the other initiatives later on. All right, slide 7 is Avery renovations. We finished phase 1 of the Avery renovations. This is the building that houses OEM, and right now we call it Vaccine Central. So we're very fortunate that we had started the upgrades on that building. It made us have a really good central location where we could run that mission. And so next year we want, I'm not asking for any funds next year, but we're going to leave this open. Currently because of the use of it as administrative building, we're able to use the state funds to do some of the small repairs that were going to be included in this line item for next year. And on page 8, you'll see that there's a couple of projects I'm requesting to carry forward. Relocate Fire Station 11 is, y'all are probably familiar with that station. It's probably one of the more visible ones in the city. It's there at Union and McLean. It's an old historic station. And there's been discussion about what to do with that station for probably at least 20 years that I'm aware of, that I've been involved in those conversations. There's been discussions about relocating it, renovating it, relocating it, renovating it, back and forth. With the property now, it's to do a total renovation. We're a little cramped for space because of the ADA requirements, so we would have to bring it up to standard. So we would like to start moving with some of those renovations, mainly some plumbing and electrical, and just some cosmetic on the inside renovations next year. Currently, we haven't been able to identify the land that would be adequate to move it at for a decent cost. You know, there's a high property over there. But also, with us relocating Fire Station 5 and Fire Station 1, we want to get those projects finished and then go back and look at the data and how that's going to impact our run volume, and then see if that still makes sense to move that station.
And Councilmembers, big or small, in terms of the question, let's try to reserve them until after the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, and Fire Station 43, this is the FF&E for Fire Station 43. Even though they have got moved in, there's still some furniture things that are en route that haven't been completed yet. Hopefully this will be finished before the end of the year, but I just wanted to add it to this just to make sure that we had all those invoices in before year's end. That, council members, that is the Fire Division's request for FY22.
Okay. Thank you, Director Sweat. Where are we getting that feedback? Okay. Councilman Carlisle, you're up first.
Thank you, Chairman. Chief Sweat, thank you. Since we got here, thank you for all that you and your team have done over the last year, especially with stepping in to help distribute vaccines. I know that was an incredibly tireless job, and just wanted to know how much we appreciate it. To that point, you know, you've served in the fire stations. Chief McGowan has served in the Navy in tight quarters for extended periods of time, and I know that that can impact morale greatly. And so as we look at slide 5, FS 22-100 repair cover line, it's extremely important to me that we're proactive in having the amenities that our firefighters need, And so you've got what I would call, I mean, it's a repair cover line. I get it. But for me, I think HVAC generators, et cetera. And then I think amenity-based little things like showers and the barracks area and where off the kitchen and things like that. So can you maybe, I guess it's two parts. Can you walk us through a little bit of bifurcate that out for what you would call basic CapEx and then direct, what we would call front of house CapEx? And then second to that question, is it enough? As we're looking at recruiting and retaining not only our police officers, but our firefighters, is that enough or is there more that we can do as we look at that? Now, recognizing, I see Shirley looking at me, recognizing that it's a very tight budget.
Yes, sir, it is a tight budget. And you'll notice in the out years that I have, the requests are more than double what they are for this year. So this is two phases. General Services also helps do maintenance on the facility. So during their budget, you will see that they've asked for some of the HVAC improvements and some other things. They will try to cover the systems. And then fire comes in and we start managing the livability things like improving, putting LED lighting in, improving the bathrooms, improving the kitchens, adding patio areas where they can grill out outside things. Like I said, things that you would want in your home if you were wanting to improve the livability. Now, of course, there's enough that could be done at the fire stations. I could spend the whole entire CIP budget on all of the fire stations, but that wouldn't be a good steward of the city's money. With us finishing the construction on the headquarters, the Fire Station 5 that's ongoing now, plus starting the Fire Station 1 construction, this is really probably about as much as my team could manage in a year. So as you see, as we start going into the out years, when I'm not building fire stations, I would really do want to start increasing that line on doing more in the fire stations.
Thank you, Chief. I do too, especially as we look at our firehouses, making sure we're accommodating both our male and female counterparts in the police station. Can we real quick just touch back on Dr. Warren's question? Walk me through one more time. 20 years in the making. That firehouse is beautiful from the exterior, and it's in a hellacious location. I mean, I don't know, good piece of real estate, I've heard, but when those fire trucks back out into the Union on a busy day, that's a rough go. So walk me through real quick just where you are, because I didn't fully understand. It sounds like we're going to do some improvements and go back and talk about it, but walk me through that. Yeah, you'd have thought we'd gotten better at the technology in person, huh?
In person.
That's right.
So, well, I can tell you, I worked at that fire station as a battalion chief, and it's an old station. I live in Midtown. I love old houses and old things, but there are some electrical upgrades.
They have a fire at a fire station, right?
Yeah, there are some electrical upgrades that are really needed, some plumbing upgrades to that station if they're going to continue to work out of there. In the foreseeable future, I don't see an opportunity to move that station. It's in a really good location. Quite honestly, it's probably one of the more popular fire stations in the city. I recall one of my predecessors, there was discussion about moving the aerial apparatus from that station, and it turned into a nightmare. Just even having a discussion about messing with that fire station. It's just such a icon in the community. So we definitely, and I've had people from the preservation and stuff, and we were just talking about, please don't ever tear that fire station down. With that, there is opportunity there. I know, if Los Savelle ever sells, I think, we talked with real estate about keeping an eye on that property. Is there an opportunity to expand that footprint there? Because it really is in the best part of where it needs to be right now.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just didn't fully understand. So thank you, and colleagues, thanks for letting me take a little extra time. It is beautiful. I've met that preservation group once or twice. They're definitely a local crowd. Thank you so much for your time. Again, thank you for everything that you do and have been doing. With that, Chair, I yield the floor.
Thank you very much. Councilman Warren?
Yes, just looking at that particular spot, there's that Goodwill store that's right next to it. I mean, I think if we're thinking we need to expand or do something that would make the neighborhood happy, there's a way we could find a good place for the Goodwill store. That might be a good place to go as far as building out from that fire station and keeping the old part intact if we ever were able to pull that off.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye open for that and other opportunities to, you know, make sure that we have the fire stations located where they need to be.
And I'm sorry I've blurted out. I just couldn't understand why you were talking about refurbishing and it said, remove or place somewhere else. I was just confused. Thank you.
No worries whatsoever. We're all a little rusty on working together back in person. Thank you very much. Councilman Johnson.
Yes, thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. In regards to the union location, have y'all come up with an estimate?
It's on.
It's on? In regards to the union location, have y'all estimated the cost considering all your limitations on that project?
No, ma'am, I don't have a current cost estimate. If this project is carried forward, we'll, definitely need to design the work, and I can definitely come back to this body at that time.
Okay, so we're not gonna put any money over there until we know for sure what we're gonna be doing with it?
No, yes, ma'am, we would have to design the project and then come back to this body to appropriate the money at that time.
Okay, somebody asked one question I had. I think that might have been it, other than your personal property, protective equipment. I see it's going up in 25. What's happening to cause that?
So the turnout ensembles at the Ware have a 10-year life expectancy, and it's our contract, that will be the 5-year mark, where we'll have to not just replace the people who are coming on, the new recruits, but some of the existing firefighters will have to start replacing some of them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for what you do as well. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members, comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move to a voice vote in favor of the fire CIP budget, which includes 5 projects totaling $8,526,400. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, seeing none, the ayes have it.
Chair, I move to recess.
We are going to take a 10-minute break. Let's start back at 4:50 because I think we may need a little bit extra time than's been allocated for the general services. So we're going to recess for 10 minutes. Can I get a motion and a second on the general services CIP? We have a motion by Councilman Smiley, second by Councilman Warren. Director Adams, will you please introduce yourself and your team, and then the floor is yours to begin presentation.
Yes, my name is Antonio Adams. I'm Director of General Services. I have to my right Ms. Elisa Rankin, my budget administrator, and then I have Ms. Juanita Farmer in the back of the room. She is my CIP operations schedule planner and the end. No, the end. Yeah, just a little levity. Start out the presentation. All right, but I will be presenting the FY22 capital improvement budget request for the General Services Division. So if we can advance to slide 1. Just a little context. The General Services Division is a shared support services that maintains the city's fleet and its buildings, and of course, we buy and sell city property. First, you'll see there is a request to for $1 million, and this is primarily for the design of the adaptive reuse of the Coke facility. In this, we propose to replace the loss of our primary fueling location in the center of the city, which is currently housed at 671 St. Jude. And then, of course, it will house other city operations in obsolete facilities, such as the engineering signal maintenance and sign shops, the public works code and grounds enforcement locations, the park ops, which is located on the fairgrounds. And then, of course, we hope to repurpose or move out of Union Extended, and we'll have a lease savings of roughly around $384,000 if we move all tenants out of that. If we have to retain the IEB Bureau of Police Services in Union Extended, then we'll have a net savings of $223,000. This year, it's just a request for $1 million. Again, this is because we are going to design this particular area, and then once design is complete, we will return in FY23 with an additional request. It is speculative at this point to ask for the money now in FY23 or schedule this out. We thought it'd be prudent to go through the design phase. I sent an advance memo via email. Some of you may have received it. Some of you may not. I apologize, late notice, but I wanted to make sure that you all knew about this before I came to you. And then, of course, subsequently, there will be a resolution in which we will present later in this month at one of the council meetings proposing to acquire this location and then, of course, repurpose some funding. Next page. And this is our capital acquisitions request. This is a annual request, and this is to replace. This is a vehicle replace request, and then of course for the various divisions, you'll see that the total request is $11 million. However, the estimated prices are $10.9 million. So of course we're slightly under budget, but we allow some flex just in the event that we do have some issues with respect to the purchases. And you'll see we're asking $3.3 or really $3.4 million for police, $325,000 for engineering, $191,000 for public works, and then specifically for street maintenance, it's $451,000 public works. For executive, which is the animal shelter, we're asking for $67,000. For fire, we're asking for $4.85. For parks, $603,000. General services, $420,000. And for libraries, $69,000. A schedule of the proposed purchases are all listed on pages 3 through 17. And these are all listed by division. Now, if we can go to, if there are no questions on the schedule purchases by division, we'll go to page 17.
We're gonna hold all questions till the end.
Yes, sir. So let's go to page 17 and we'll deal with our annual major modification cover line. And these funds are focused on the upgrade and/or repair of our building systems. So general services, during its CIP process, I work with the divisions, and also we schedule out based on a facility conditions assessment, whereas we identify the major repairs or end of life for a lot of our building systems. As such, we work with the divisions to identify what should be priority with respect to operations interference. And so then we schedule these projects here for our annual CIP. Then, of course, we have a request to replenish our emergency break fix line, which over the last couple of years, we run through that money as well. The schedule of proposed repairs are listed on pages 18, 19, and 20. And then, of course, our final request is a cover line for City Hall. We propose to spend the majority of those funds, and that's $4.9 million. We propose to spend the majority of those funds on the City Hall cladding project, and or if there are any savings from that project, then we will dedicate those to the renovation of the elevators in the public service building, which is 170 across the plaza. That concludes the general services presentation. I'm now open for any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you very much. First up, I've got Councilman Carlisle in the queue, and then Councilman Smiley.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Director Adams. I have, I think, 3 questions here.
Okay.
For the code facility, will we book, and maybe for Shirley, really, will we book, when we share company-owned assets amongst other divisions, do we book intercompany balances for like a sublease, so to speak? Meaning, Antonio works as if he's a shared services provider, and that's how he operates. So since engineering and public works and parks would be in his building, will they enter into a sublease or anything like that, and we show it that way, or are they just going to occupy the space?
They're just going to occupy the space.
Okay.
There are some internal things that we do that we charge back through certain services. For instance, in the fleet, the shop charges and the fuel, those are all charges back. But in terms of location, no, we don't.
Okay. Second question goes to vehicles, and we can talk about it now, or we can talk about it at a later time. It just kind of goes to what I was asking earlier, which is capital assets and versus, capital lease versus operating leases, and more particular for short-term assets, which is vehicles. Obviously, I understand that the short-term nature of and specialty of police vehicles, fire vehicles. I'm sure there's state law or federal law on how those things can be transferred and what's in them, and that's above my pay grade. But for simple things like a sedan for code enforcement and a dump truck and things that may not have a life after, why don't we lease certain vehicles versus purchase other vehicles? And it's a function of the cost of capital. I mean, I get that, but what makes me nervous is you drive over Poplar and you see a fleet of old vehicles sitting down, or Union rather, you see a fleet of old vehicles that can be parted out. But at the end of the day, why are we not looking at operating leases? Really, I don't want to look at operating leases. I don't. But why aren't we looking at the possibility of capital leases? And can we do that when we talk about vehicles? I mean.
So, thank you, Councilman. There are two things with that. One, we are looking at, in fact, trying to put in some lease agreements for those reoccurring, especially the things like the sedans and things like that do not take a lot of modification upon purchasing. The second thing is, you remember my favorite slide that has all the debt service on it? If you back that up a couple of years, even 6 or 7 years, you would see those bars going even higher, and we simply did not have operating capital that we could continue to buy vehicles, police cars and things like that on a recurring basis, where we did have to incur that. One of the things that we are looking at is trying to put some plans in place so when that debt cliff does occur, that gives an opportunity to use a lot of capital pay-go as opposed to debt for those types of things.
But I guess my question is, again, this is back to GASB. Can I use commercial paper or geo bonds? In my world, typically a capital lease is the nature and the length of the lease. And so 3 to 5 year assets wouldn't fall under that provision. So if we entered into the lease, it would be through the operating budget. Is correct? And that,
if we entered into a lease, it would be through the operating budget.
Yeah, and that's, and then to your point, that's my grave concern is I don't want to do that. But we end up owning these assets, and sometimes, yes, we can send a code enforcement sedan to an auction somewhere and recoup funds, but, right. That's right. A fleet vehicle, and again, I'm not talking about highly specialized equipment. I'm just talking generally. So I understand that. My last question is more of a statement. I'll say this in my professional capacity as a developer and a real estate person. As much as I love this building, and I know the taxpayers don't want to hear it, but the reality is this building is obsolete. And at some point, whether it's this body or 3 bodies from now, this building will end up, and it is already, in my opinion, becoming to the point where we're sinking more capital in it to just try and keep it afloat than we would be if we just went ahead and built a new building or moved into a building and leased it, wherever that might be. But the amount of capital that's going to be poured into this building in order to get what we're getting out of it is not, it's not anything anybody else would ever do. It's just to the point where it's so specially designed in the time period that it was designed in, and with the marble on the exterior and all of the things that are wrong with it. At some point, somebody's going to have to decide that that moment's coming. I think it's here, but obviously I'm just one voice. But God bless you for wanting to put $5 million back into this thing. I'm not sure that's where I'd stick my money. With that, I yield the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just concur with Councilman Carlisle at this point as it relates to City Hall as we know it. But I have another question, and maybe I'm missing something. Where it comes to, well, page 6, Public Works. Does this include all the vehicles Public Works will have? The reason I'm asking the question, because as I understand it, illegal dumping is now under Public Works. And when I was speaking to Director Connect, he mentioned something along the lines of, trying to get everything moved over, potentially purchasing new vehicles. And I'm not sure if, I guess a total of 7 vehicles will suffice as it relates to, picking up the trash and illegal dumping around the city. So I'm just trying to figure out if I'm missing something or.
No, sir. So I draw your attention to page 6 and page 7.
Okay.
And page 8. Those represent the number of vehicles that Public Works will have. What we did was we separated those vehicles out to identify those that will go strictly under street maintenance, mm-hmm. and those that will be identified for specifically street maintenance and paving, then of course right-of-way maintenance. That's on page 8. Mm-hmm. But then you move back to page 6, and that's code enforcement and environmental enforcement, which relate to blight enforcement and a lot of those remediation efforts specifically for those.
So how many vehicles specific for, blight remediation?
For blight remediation?
Blight remediation. I'm assuming, does it fall under code enforcement?
I would say so. I mean, I can't speak specifically because Director Connect would have to,
Okay, so this
speak
is
to
a
that,
question.
but I'll say this, I would dare say those that are related to code enforcement and environmental enforcement would do so. But again, and this is for structures and residences or vacant lots. But then, of course, you have to identify those that are in right-of-way maintenance as well, in which they may, in some instances, pick up the litter and things of that nature in our right-of-way and correct those related items as well.
So this does, okay, so I get that. So this does include the fact that it's being, illegal dumping is being transferred or put under Director Connect as opposed to Director Lamar?
Okay.
So you're right, Councilman. So there's more equipment that is here. Heavy equipment is under solid waste right now, and we're working to transfer that over. This just talks about replacing the existing resources that Director Connect has for both code enforcement and right-of-way maintenance. He has a much larger fleet than this. This is just the regular replacement. When we get to transfer over that heavy equipment for picking up those loads, that will come under Director Connect's capital requests instead of out of the solid waste fund. So that's where that equipment resides today. So you'll be looking for that shift coming in the future once we're prepared to do that.
Oh, I will. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Canale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to piggyback a little bit off of what Councilman Carlisle said about the municipal lease possibility for some of our bigger ticket items. And it's a little bit more to me than just about how we buy them, but it goes a little bit further into employee morale. And if I've got a brand new garbage truck and Councilman Ford's got one that's 10 years old, you know, as far as the productivity, employee morale, how fast we get things done, and driving these vehicles until they're worth nothing and then parking them at Union and Avery. And I don't know if there's any money in that stuff parked there or not, but it seems very wasteful to me. So whether we get on a municipal lease program and we're turning them in every 3-5 years, whatever it is, or whether we're buying them with bonds, I think we need to establish from the front end that we're going to drive this vehicle for 5 years and then we're going to trade it in. We're going to get rid of it. We're going to keep our employees in the best equipment that we can afford so that we keep our morale up and that we keep our productivity up at the highest level possible. And so that all neighborhoods get the same level of service, that the brand new garbage trucks aren't running in 38120 and 38117, while our garbage trucks that are 10 years old are running in South Memphis and other parts of the city. So it needs to be equitable across the board. I think our employees deserve the best equipment to get the job done in the best time frame allowed. And my second question is to Chief Ford. Do we have any money allocated in CIP for the Levitt Shell?
I'll look at that to see if there's, I don't believe there's money allocated because I think there's a state grant that's coming for that in the amount of $1.2 million.
Okay.
Which was the amount of capital improvements they needed for this year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had.
All right. Councilwoman Logan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation, Director. My question is, I didn't see, are we going to be presented with information concerning solid waste acquisition of trucks? Because I didn't see anything in here. And is it going to come later, or is it supposed to? It will come later.
Yes, ma'am. That's a solid waste funded item. And so the solid waste fund, as you know, we did the rate change that pays for their operations, for their personnel. It pays for some reserves, and it also pays for their recurring capital acquisitions, including trucks. As you know, when we did the loan or the actual grant from the unassigned fund balance, we outfitted the fleet. To Councilman Canale's point, we bought all new garbage trucks. And then with that rate, we put into place recurring every year replacement cycle for those vehicles out of the solid waste fund. So you'll hear that from Director Lamar in his presentation for capital.
And okay, I'm not talking about replacement. I'm talking about additional trucks so we can up our inventory so we can eventually service all of our residents. So are we gonna see requests for new trucks and inventory to add to, new trucks to add to the inventory? For eventually having enough trucks to service all the residents in Memphis?
Sure, I'll let, Mr. Adams answer that, but that question will be answered when we decide to either in-source Area E, if that's what you're speaking of, or outsource, but today that is not the case.
So as of right now, we don't have anything being presented to show that we're going to be acquiring new trucks to serve all of our residents. We're going to maintain where we are right now until it's decided what we're going to do.
Correct, according to the plan that we presented, that's right.
So 2022, we're looking to do the same thing that we are doing now.
Correct.
Okay.
And so I can speak to your question, Councilwoman Logan, and Councilman Ford Canale's comment as well. From the repair side of this, we would much rather deal with target maintenance, which deals with your routine maintenance of oil changes, tune-ups, tires, etc., as opposed to dealing with the aged fleet that requires more intensive repair. That would be it would be less expensive with respect to our shop charges, but one, it kind of depends on, or not kind of, it definitely depends on our taste for how much we plan to spend to acquire the new equipment to bring it up to service. And so again, it's up to the administration's request, and then your desire at the spending level and how much the city can actually tolerate with respect to the spend to upgrade the trucks. Again, I'll tell you, and I'll speak on behalf of my mechanics, they would much rather do target maintenance than non-targeted maintenance, because at that particular point, it takes the truck out of service, it does longer, then of course it's more extensive and more expensive with respect to the spend.
Absolutely. Thank you. I understand that and appreciate that, but my question was geared more towards the acquisition of new trucks and increasing our inventory so that we can meet the needs of all of our residents.
And I'll say this, the one thing that the various divisions do, they manage their fleet, so they understand what they need in reserve. So it's not always a one-for-one trade in a replacement. It can be an acquisition, and they retain the best vehicles to ensure that they have a standby vehicle. We try to get them to replace them, as that is a lot less expensive for us as far as our city shop charges. But again, sometimes they do retain those to make sure that they have a standby.
Thank you. Are you back, Chair?
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman. Director Adams, so this is a list of vehicles to purchase based on what we can afford. If it was a list of vehicles to purchase based on what we need, how large would the number be?
I can't answer that.
How do we back into the $11 million budget for this? And Chief Ford, this may also be a question for you. And are we retiring, or are more vehicles coming out of service every year than what is being replaced in this budget? Just give us a sense of.
So on average, roughly over the last couple of years, we've been retiring 205 vehicles, and that is citywide. And so I'll have to get you a schedule per division. But with respect to what we're putting in, it is roughly, we're slightly putting in a little bit more. It actually depends on the division. And right now we are putting a lot of money into our solid waste over the last couple of years, our police and our fire services vehicles, all of which are in great need. If you take into consideration fire services and police, quite honestly, they run their vehicles in some instances 12, 16 hours a day, just depending on the schedule and the need. So you have high mileage vehicles. So quite honestly, if you were going to retire a vehicle in police services, you wouldn't wait 5 years. It'd be a 3-year retirement. But You know, again, it depends on what we can get out of that vehicle, or we can repurpose. Our divisions work to repurpose vehicles before we fully retire those. And those are vehicles that will come down to, say, my office staff. My office staff would get a retired police cruiser. We take the cages out, we take the protection package out, we make that a standard sedan, and then we would use it in my office staff just to get us from point A to point B. And then, of course, after some time, we would retire that vehicle completely. So, I mean, we make the best use of the vehicle while we can. Getting back to the heart of your question, it would take us quite a bit. We would have to look, and I know that we are looking and trying to develop a better business model with respect to our fleet management. And so I would anticipate, one, we would come back with more leases. We're currently doing that with our equipment. And so we made a major step with respect to equipment. And you'll notice here, there's no equipment on our capital acquisition request. And this is the second year that we've not made a piece of equipment with respect to the request. And so now we're going to move to leasing vehicles and what makes sense for us.
Mm-hmm. Chief Ford.
Thank you, Councilman Morgan. I will say, too, one of the first things that we do when we start looking at our CIP budget for the year is Director Adams does meet with each division, kind of like what's your highest priority, what's your need. I would say in comparison also, this year you see a significant increase. Last year, our capital acquisition budget that was approved to pass was $8.6 million. So you do see some additions in there. When we buy aerial ladder trucks, those are not $36,000 sedans. So it's a huge expense, and we only do those as they're coming through their normal life maintenance, or if, like we have the instance where an ambulance catches on fire, or whatever, it becomes out of commission due to something other than just normal wear and tear. So like we do have, I think 6 ambulances on this year, 6 or 7, and that's, I don't think last year we had any ambulances on. So we try to look to see what is the highest priority for those things that we absolutely must have for critical mission.
And I just have to ask, and because I want to be careful to make sure that we're keeping up with our schedule of maintenance and replacement on equipment. I think we've had issues in the past councils that I've been a part of. MLGW would be one example. We were so excited to pass a budget that didn't have a rate increase, and we didn't ask the hard questions of, are we replacing poles and pipeline and transformers as often as we should have been? And now, then we got behind the 8 ball several years later as we got behind on a lot of maintenance. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen with our traffic signals. I want to make sure that doesn't happen with our fleet. One example that jumped out at me here is that we have 4 ambulances that we're replacing this year. We have about 36 ambulances, I believe, in service, and I thought the lifespan on those was shorter than 9 years. And so I'd imagine, I haven't gone back to look, at the past years, maybe this is just a down year, but I imagine on average we would need to be replacing more than 4 ambulances a year. That's not a vehicle that can be repurposed very easily. But Director Sweat's not here.
I think it was 2 years ago that we had 11 ambulances on. Okay. So again, every year we look at it as to what that top priority possibly must be.
Perfect. And then there's a larger conversation that Chief Ford and Chief McGowan that we've had about CIP and whether vehicles are the proper use of CIP funding when we're doing relatively some medium-term debt but long-term debt for the cost of these vehicles, that their lifespan is much shorter than the debt that we're taking out. And so I think just as a point on that, I'm going to vote no on this CIP budget this year. I know we can't move it all at once. I think I've been very open about my desire, intent to want to see it slowly moved over to operating budget. And this is no reflection upon you, Director Adams. I'm so much happier with how we're doing vehicles from what we used to do several years ago. And Chief Ford, you had a hand in this as well, where we had vehicle purchases in every different division of CIP, and sometimes there was overlap, and sometimes those vehicles were being purchased in both the CIP and the operating. They were being double counted. So having it all under your management, I think, is a lot easier and cleaner, and has had things running more efficiently within the city. So thank you for that. But Accelerate Memphis just doubled down, I think, my position on this, where there were so many great projects in terms of things that needed to be funded in the city, as well as deferred maintenance that we took care of through a very special and unique opportunity. And those are opportunities, and those projects that are being funded through Accelerate Memphis, we should and need to make more room for in our CIP budget. And this would be one of the desired areas where I'd slowly want to see it transitioning over to operating. And we just haven't made, maybe the leasing agreements will help get us there, but we just haven't made that step as yet. So I'll hold my comments there. Thank you all very much. Councilman Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On page 7, how you doing, Director Adams, by the way?
Well.
On page 17, your total project cost is $8,500,000. Where's the backup? Is that directly behind it? I'm just trying to add it up. Or is that the backup? For the 8.5 million.
You said 17?
Page 17. Mm-hmm.
So the backup is on pages 18, 19, and 20. Those are the scheduled projects that we have for that. And it's a cover line. And typically what happens is upon approval from you all in the budget in the beginning of the fiscal year, we come before you with the same schedule of projects and we request an appropriation. And so we will, if approved, then the projects on 18, 19, and 20 are our proposed projects for that next year, or for FY22. We'll come before you in July. We'll ask for appropriation. Many of the projects we kind of start looking at from a preliminary basis, some level of design, so that we can make sure that they are shovel ready and we can execute reasonably within the 12-month period of FY22.
Okay, under emergency on page 20.
Yes, ma'am.
You got $2.6 million. What is that for? Right.
So we have a line that we use. It's GS 019106, and that's our emergency break fix line. In many instances, and I'll use this most recent ice storm, we took some severe damage to our pipes and our HVAC system here in City Hall. Typically, in order to request this type of funding, we would have to wait for Tuesday or either ask for a called meeting, ask you to amend the CIP budget for the tune of that repair. This allows us a small amount that we can manage within a year or maybe 2 years, and we can request. What we do is we execute a emergency exception. It's registered in purchasing, and we then make the repair so that we can keep the buildings operational. And so that's what that request, that's what the request is, and we're just asking to replenish that line.
Okay, so this past year, how much did you have in that particular area, and did you use it all up?
I can tell you that. Right now, we have roughly $988,000 left. We started with roughly $3 million to begin with, and I still have expenditures coming out of that line to cover some projects. One thing that hit us that was unanticipated was the tight supply chain that occurred from COVID. And so with that supply chain, it increased the cost of a lot of our material and supplies. So honestly, I'm running over budget in some projects. So I have to literally manage the budget, and I have to use this line sometimes to finish off certain projects. So prefabricated steel, lumber, and there are a couple other metal related properties that we purchased that have exponentially jumped up in price. And so that's what we're utilizing this line also to cover, so that we don't have to come back and ask for a modification or amendment to our CIP budget to ask for more money.
Okay, how much you have balance, on balance with the nine what?
The balance right now is $988,000, and I can get you the anticipated expenditures as well, so we can deduct.
Okay. Back to page number 1, do you think it's gonna cost $1 million for the design for this, coach facility, just to design and set up?
Yes, ma'am. Then that's a rough estimate. If we don't, I'll come back to you and I ask to reappropriate those funds for construction.
Okay, the last question, the vehicle for the animal shelter, what type
Yes,
of
ma'am.
what type of vehicle is that costing $66,000?
It's a animal control van. It's a van with cages, or I say it's a van, but it's really not a van. It's a truck with a box on the back. There's cages for the animals, various animals, to be housed in once they pick them up. Okay. And so it is a specially modified van or truck.
All right, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Any other council members, comments or questions? Councilman Carlisle.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. That break fix line, interesting. It's interesting. I get it. $1 million though in 30 days. I'll be interested to see how the reconcile comes out. I get it. All right.
Yeah. Oh, it started out at 3.7.
Right.
So again, I mean,
but my question goes to the fact that you just pontificated that it was due to COVID supply chain issues, right? So I know I'm pretty sure we may or may not have spent all of our CARES funding. So my question is and/or ARP. My question to you is, if it's COVID related, why are we using city debt as opposed to federal grant dollars?
So again, I think you misunderstood what I stated. The increased prices.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I got it. Trust me, lumber's up 3x, steel's up. I understand.
So notwithstanding COVID, it's still a city-owned building with our responsibility to maintain. And so I'll say this now, quite honestly, again, the maintenance of the building and state of the buildings also depend on our level of investment. And so to that end, if we are going to spend at the level that we spend, then I will need the funds available to identify. Many of the funds that we use are for A&E services, quite honestly, too. If we are going to do due diligence to acquire a building, many of the funds are used to study, conduct air quality testing, et cetera. So I
mean, look, I get your point. It's basically an operating capital fund. You know, it is, whether it's an emergency break fix or, to your point, we want to have some exploratory capital to do some due diligence. I mean, I understand. My point is, and I would take a harder line, is I guess it's the willingness. If we were tax attorneys or we were interpreting federal guidance on one-time, non-recurring expenses related to COVID, supply chain causing an unexpected increase in cost, I would get an opinion that says that would fall into that category. The mayor may feel differently, but that's his bailiwick to want to fight. So I get it. I yield the floor.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may not have it in here, but
yes, sir.
I'm looking at GS 22-100 major mod and 8.5. What was it last year? Because is this the line where I think I've complained about we have some 200, 300 buildings, and I think we may have been at 3 million. So if anything, I think that this is an indication of our not making proper maintenance and investments and repairs on things previously. And if we're talking about a permanent structure, it is something that's lasting 15, 20 years, or even 10 for that matter. But if I can get an idea of where we were last year, I think that if this is the same figure, I think we're doing a better job of addressing these concerns than we've done in previous years. For some reason, like 3 million, and I don't know whether it was last year or year before last that I made the point about us being a cheap city. We are presiding over over a raggedy city, and we're not making just basic, what would be cosmetic improvements on things.
I'll get you that number here shortly.
Actually, I have it for you. So, yes, I did. So your major modification line was 3.7 million.
Okay.
And then it was distributed out during, the course of the year, 1.2 for roofing, 942,000 for electric, 60,000 for plumbing, 1.4 for HVAC, and 120,000 for carpentry.
So colleagues, to my point, we haven't made investments like this. We hadn't made allocations like this in the past. And at some point, we can continue to be cheap, and then we have to have larger expenditures like this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other council members, comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll go to a voice vote on these 4 items in the general services CIP budget totaling $25,400,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. In opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, can we get an update on the council chambers, please?
Thank you, Ms. Allen.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. So the council chambers are complete. We are awaiting some amenities, which will get some furniture and amenities to you all's break room. But then primarily we have 3 items that are coming, which are our charging stations for the participants. But the council chambers are complete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, general services CIP is complete. Next up is library division. Director McCloy is joining us online. Director McCloy, do we have you?
I'm sorry, yes, you've got me.
Chairman, I move the budget.
Okay. All right, so we have it moved by Councilman Carlisle, seconded by Councilman Warren. Director McCoy, will you introduce yourself and whatever team you have with you, and then the floor is yours for the presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm Keenan McCoy. I'm the director of Memphis Public Libraries, and we're excited to be here today. We actually, I think Mary Hazlip of Hazlip Studios is on the line with us, and as is Gay Kane, who's the regional manager that covers the Northeast region of Memphis Public Libraries. And so we're really excited that we've got this going, and it's going to be at 2220 James Road. And it's going to be an extraordinary space. It's directly across the street from Rodney Baber Park. And I know that a number of you have seen the plans, and it's just beautiful. But we're going to take the current Fraser branch, which is about the most popular / busy branch per square foot in the library system. And we're about to take that from 6,000 feet to a little over 20,000 square feet. It's going to be incredibly flexible space. We're really thrilled about it. And I think that we've learned a whole lot from our other construction that we've been doing recently. And I think it's going to be just amazing. We also have it's going to back up to the Wolf River Trail. It's going to be an extremely special space. So, and it's, again, right across the street from Rodney Baber Park. So we're thrilled about it. And I think it'll be beautiful. Y'all probably are familiar with Hazlip Studios because they did the Children's Museum and some other significant places, the Amazeum in Bentonville and other spaces. But anyway, we're very pleased with the progress, and every single thing about the Fraser Library is going to be able to be reconfigured anytime we want. It'll be on casters. It'll be, we can move anything around. If we decide that we don't want this to be the children's area, we want it to be the adults area or the seniors area, whatever it is, we can reconfigure it. So it's an incredibly flexible space, and we're just thrilled about it. So it's it's, I don't know if we need, like, how much we are talking about right now, but so far we've spent $829,000 on the project, $829,011. And we are sending the project out for bid as we speak. Building design and construction is responsible for that, but we're doing that right now. And so hopefully that'll be on the streets and we will have great news. The anticipated date is about 12 months from when we get the bids back for construction. So we're actually pretty confident that this is going to be an incredible addition to not just the libraries, but to the Memphis community and Fraser. I mean, Fraser and the Memphis community, broader Memphis community.
Okay, thank you very much, Director. Any comments or questions from council members? It's a great project being handled by a terrific director. All right, seeing no council members in the queue, all those in favor of the single CIP project in the library division that totals $2,420,000 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Library CIP does pass. We will move on to our last. Thank you, Director McCoy. Move on to our last.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your support so much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We will move on to our last presentation agenda item of the day, which is the CIP budget for the Renaissance Convention Center.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilman Warren, seconded by Councilman Carlisle. And Dean Dennis, if you'll just introduce yourself and the team that you've got with you. And then the floor is yours for presentation.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, councilors, and thank you so much for having us. And it's the second time in 2 days, so we appreciate having you for your retreat on Saturday at the new convention center, the remodeled convention center, and we were thrilled to have you on our first event in that space, and we thank you very much for being there. With me today is Chuck Jabor. Chuck is our Director of Finance, been with the building a number of years, and many of you recognize Chuck. He's been a great asset to us and our team there in developing our budgets. So we had submitted a list of potential projects. As you know, the convention center went through the large renovation, but there are many things that were not included in that scope of work that were maintenance items that were not included in the construction. So the list that was prepared for you are items that fell outside of that. And we will plan to submit those again based on the fact that we or where we are with the financial piece of it. There were some modernization issues with our parking garage that weren't included in there, and some safety issues with lighting and other concerns we have there. There are some units on top of the kitchen that were not included in that, some HVAC units that were part of that. And so what was submitted back to us from Director Ford and Chief McGowan were the allocations of the cover line of the $400,000 and per year for the next several years, which gives us a great opportunity to plan, really look at what those projects are and then resubmit those based on the priorities of what we need to do. Chuck, anything to add to that?
You did a good job.
So that's really where we are. Chief McGowan, I don't know, you know the convention center project better than anyone. If you have anything to add to that.
I think you covered it. I appreciate that. It just gives, similar to what Antonio talked about, just to make sure that you all have the opportunity to fix those things that are the highest priority without having to come back here and just doing what you need to do to keep that building operating at its peak condition. And then without having to dip into building reserves to do so. And we're hopeful that building reserves will continue to increase as revenues increase with this world-class facility that we have, so that it diminishes the amount of asks.
It gives us an opportunity to really plan ahead and know where we need to be. I can tell you that one of the things that was not in the project that really is going to need some attention is Air Handler 9, which services part of the third floor, was not in the construction, not in the scope of the project. And so as we look at that, it gives us an idea to really plan ourselves and put ourselves in the right position to really monitor this asset for you in the city. So.
Well, thank you. Really enjoyed seeing the space on Saturday, and sometimes if the political winds are in your favor, less is more in terms of the presentation. We're gonna go to Councilman Warren first.
Yeah, I just was impressed that it's $1 million to run the utilities. And if you're only needing $400,000 to continue modernization or to keep it going, that seems reasonable for that amount of electric bill. So I think we should vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Any other comments from council members or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move to a voice vote on this single item for the Renaissance Convention Center totaling $400,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of the chair is the ayes have it, and this CIP budget for the Renaissance Convention Center is approved.
Chair, I move to recess till
I've got one item, and if other council members have items, just a reminder to please email and contact Ms. Hayes with your request for grant selections that you would like to hear. We're going to go over that first thing tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and it will go a lot smoother if everybody emails in. I think so far we have about half of council members that have replied to her. So if y'all can get that in between now and 8 a.m. tomorrow, it'll make tomorrow go a lot smoother. Any other business for this committee? Oh, Chief.
Something motor like that.
Chief Ford. Well, we got so many Fords, you know.
I'm like going, you know, I don't live in District 5, I live in District 1. So I just wanted to remind council as we go through the remainder of the CIP presentations tomorrow, when we sit down and build these budgets, you know, it's kind of earlier in the year. So we look at our March cutoff and then we sit down with each division and we try to project out. And Director Adams kind of said it, we're looking at, you know, we're going to spend the rest of this quarter. From their presentations, what will happen is the final budget will have the actual numbers on it, because we'll know much closer by the time that the vote is passed in June, that we can make sure that we've updated if that carry forward number is any less. It won't be higher, it can only be less. So I just kind of wanted to give you that, because I know some of our other projects in public works has lots of carryover into it. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there tomorrow or Wednesday when we come back.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question, please.
All right, Councilman Swearingen.
It has been shared that we are only to suggest 5 to 7 organizations to be presented before the council. Is that correct?
I think that would be the preference, just in terms of the time constraints we're under. If you can imagine, if every council member suggested a unique 10 organizations, that would be 130 to hear. And even though we give them 5 minutes to present, historically it has taken at least 8 to 10 minutes to get through the presentation. So then all of a sudden we would be talking about, almost 20 hours of presentations. So just from a time management point of view, if council members could try to be conscious or help coordinate, and this is part of what we'll try to organize tomorrow morning and looking at the list, and still have an opportunity to see if there are grant organizations that have been left off, that we can still include them. I think it's going to grow from 5 to 7, but let's try to hold ourselves to that if at all possible.
What if we have 20 organizations where you want to give a limited amount of money?
Mm-hmm.
How do you share that with this?
I think that's.
How does that come into play?
Let's start with the recommendations that we can. And I think that'll be part of the discussion tomorrow about who has not been recommended that we want to make sure are included or hear from, or somebody that's received in the past, or try to talk with other council members because those 20 that you might want to hear from, and there might be another council member that wants to hear 15 and realize that y'all have got 10 that overlap. So really between the two of y'all, it's only 25 or so.
Last question. those that are not selected, are they, automatically eliminated?
I think it's going to be best if if there's somebody that we think potentially we would give a grant to, I think it's fair if the council members have the opportunity to hear them present, hear from that organization, and to engage with them about their request. So in the past, that's what we've done. In order to receive funding, they had to have applied and been heard by the council.
But I'm just sharing, those that the council members don't select, are they automatically eliminated from the process and being able to present themselves?
Yes.
Where the council could possibly be encouraged through their presentation?
Yes. Even if it's organizations that we've heard from in the past, it might not have been organizations that all the council members that are present now have heard from. So if there is somebody that you are considering giving funding to, I think we need to make sure they're on the list and they're going to present, and every council member has an opportunity to engage with them on what they're asking. So yes, I would not leave anybody off your list of people that you might intend to give to.
I'm not speaking of my.
Okay.
Okay, if I submit a list,
Mm-hmm.
the other council members submit a list.
Mm-hmm.
There are some individuals that were not on the list. Are they eliminated from the process because they were not selected by a council member?
Not automatically. That's what we're going to discuss first thing tomorrow morning is if everybody can submit, then we can see in who has been submitted, requested to be heard, who hasn't been requested to be heard. And if we look at that list of people that haven't requested to be heard and their council members that have serious issue with people they think have been left off, I think that is tomorrow morning will be the time to include them, and we'll go council member by council member, making sure that folks are included. This is just an attempt to try to narrow down the list from more than the 100+ applications we have to the organizations that really have a chance of receiving funding from the council, because not all 100+ organizations will receive funding. That's not the way it's been in the past either.